Hello, I'm Dr. Tiffany Hunter, energy healer in the United States. Welcome to Life Made Easier podcast, where you'll find ancient wisdom with a modern approach. In each episode, we're sharing tips and tricks from the world of energy healing to help you develop and enhance your energy intelligence, which will hopefully then again make your life easier in simple and practical ways.
And I'm Dr. Karen Janes, a psychologist and energy healer in the UK. Have you ever noticed that spending time with certain people leaves you feeling really drained? Or maybe you've noticed that a certain place can leave you feeling refreshed or joyful? In today's episode, we're going to talk about the way we feel affected by the energy of places and people that we spend time with, and what we can do to either mitigate that, minimize that impact, or enhance it.
Yes. And this is actually a common experience for many people. And despite that, I'm still surprised by how many people, when we speak about it, will stop mid-sentence and say to me something to the effect of, "So you mean I'm not crazy?" This is really happening to me? I was like, yes, this is really happening. We are all affected by the world around us. We're affected by the people, by the buildings, by the landscape, by the materials that are being used, by everything around us. And the way it may be showing up for you is that you might feel particularly exhausted when you're with certain people. You're sitting in a room someplace just talking, and somehow by the end of the conversation, you feel like you've been running a marathon. Similarly, a particular place. I think we can all agree that shopping malls are a lot more difficult to spend time in than our back gardens. And the reverse can be true, right? There can be places around us that just always we leave feeling, and people that we leave feeling buoyant and happy and just so much more positive than we did when we went into it. There's reasons for these things happening us. There are reasons that are understandable that we're going to talk about and explain and go over, and as well as talk about what we can do to, as Karen said, mitigate those effects or enhance them depending on what we want. And one of the first things to understand about all of this is that we as a human species are semi-porous. Our energy is semi-porous, not dissimilar to our skin. And there is simply no way, because of that porousness, that we're not going to be affected by things around us. It makes a difference. And it will impact us on a physical, emotional, mental, and energetic level.
It's funny, we started thinking about this topic in terms of being affected by our environment, but actually, as Tiffany has touched upon already, I think we really began to think it's hard to completely separate out the environment and the people in the environment. I mean, we might be able to do that a bit more easily if we're, out in a field by ourselves or some woods by ourselves. But even places like that can be impacted by things that have happened in those places. So we think it's really important to have some awareness and some understanding about how other people might affect us. As Tiffany was talking about, a sense that our energy system, that field of energy around us, that for shorthand it's easiest to call our aura, is semi-porous. That's the sort of energetic edge of our body, of our being, that extends a bit beyond our physical body. And when we stand very near to somebody, there will be a degree to which our aura, our energy field, is overlapping or at least touching up against someone else's. And like an example of this might be if you happen to be standing in I want to say a queue, but whenever I'm talking to you, Tiffany, I always want to say a line. So for the American and the English audience, either, and you're bumping up against somebody who really hates their body. You might start to feel a bit uncomfortable. You might start to have some negative thoughts about yourself. Or, even if it's something less specific than that, someone's just had a bad day, or as Tiffany said, the opposite can be true, a great day, you might start to be a little bit or a lot affected by that, depending on quite a lot of different things, but one, depending on kind of how well your barrier, your porousness, just like our skin, if it's damaged or under stress, will become more vulnerable to the world around and what we put on it. And within our relationships, I think it can also show up because, and that might be even more so because we are emotionally invested in people we know and love and care about or spend a lot of time with, and we may start to sometimes have a sense of almost feeling some of what they're feeling, in ways that may not be so helpful. Which isn't that we shouldn't try to be aware of how the people around us are feeling, but if we start to take that energy in, that can become less helpful. Actually, for both of us, not just for the person who's taking that energy in, particularly if it's something more negative. And being able to understand a bit more about this can help you to understand and start to get to know, better able to discern really the difference between what's you, what's your stuff, and what's somebody else. And by being able to be a bit clearer about that, you can start to kind of have a little bit more distance. And the other thing that I just wanted to say here is that things are more likely to affect you if there is some resonance for that feeling within you. So if I go back to my previous example of somebody really hating their body, if you're at a place in your life where you actually feel quite good about your body, quite comfortable with yourself, the effect of that being in that other person's energy may be more to just feel a little bit out of sorts. But if you have a lot of worries and concerns and difficult feelings about your body, and then you stand next to someone else who has a similar feelings, that there's going to be a lot of resonance between those two things. So it's likely to be more impactful, but still, even if there isn't a resonance, still have an effect.
Yes, I think the best physical analogy that I can give people that has always really helped me is if you hug somebody who's wearing a fair bit of perfume and then you step away from them. Well, now you're also wearing some perfume. And sometimes you don't even have to touch them, right? Especially if they happen to be a middle school, 14-year-old boy with all the cologne that 14-year-old boys tend towards, right? Just standing next to them, you can walk away and go like, wow, like I can smell that on myself. Because we are energetically porous, that's happening between two people with our energy. We are always, I want to say, bouncing off of each other, because that sounds very active. It's more like the perfume. It's just sort of wafting in each other's directions. And so when we're physically close, somebody else's energy is going to waft towards us. And again, because our energetic barrier is porous, it's going to, some of it is going to get through. Not all of it, but some of it is going to get through. And we will also be doing this with other people. And a little bit like the perfume analogy, we don't even need to be standing next to them. Somebody could be, as Karen said, standing someplace in a supermarket, thinking their thoughts and having their feelings about food, walk away, and you come walk where they were standing, and then you will probably pick up those things. So no, you're not crazy. Those things they are actually all happening. I think something,
I think the one other, but sorry, I'm interrupting you there. Um,
no, go ahead. Finish
the
your
the
thought.
other bit to add the other bit to add there is, generally, if we are picking up something from somebody else, either who's in our proximity or they've just kind of left it lying around, that energy that feels not good in some way, it's usually not because anybody is wishing us any harm. And it's a bit like, if you walk through a field of mud where cows have been, let's say, it's really hard to not pick up some of that stuff, at least on your feet. And it's not because, the cows wished you any ill. It's just that that's what happens when we, when we kind of go into certain environments, we are going to come into contact with whatever is in that environment. So the energies that have been of that place or have been left there will have something of an impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think here is where the concept of resonance becomes super important, because while we did say that this energetic exchange can also be positive and joyous, it's clear that we're spending more time talking about the negative stuff. And I think it wouldn't surprise anybody to say, well, how come it's so easy to pick up the negative stuff, but I'm not doing the positive stuff nearly as much? And some of the reason for that is this concept of resonance. If any part of me has that energetic frequency inside my body, when I encounter it out in the world, the frequency inside of me is going to wiggle and wobble and make itself known, right? When it's a big part of me, it's going to be a bigger reaction. If there's no part of me that has a corresponding energetic frequency inside my energy anatomy, then the thing I'm being exposed to does its thing and it tends to go quickly. So this is part of why the positive stuff doesn't stick as much. The more clearance and the more we clear out our own energetic frequencies that are troubling us, the less we will resonate with the negative things around us. And that's also why we don't have as much of a strong, intense experience of the positive things around us. They tend to be more fleeting. So that tends to be more fleeting, and that's sad. But the good part about this explanation is that in the same way, that is how you make the negative things more fleeting, is we clean out the things inside of us so that when we are exposed to these debris and this stuff that's around us, it just sort of happens and it comes and it goes and it doesn't stick with us.
I wonder if there's also some relevance here with, I was reading something the other day about how, in a sort of evolutionary perspective, we are wired to look for the potential threats and the you know, and in our most of us in the Western world, at least, you know, don't live in a kind of day-to-day state of threat. Some people do, obviously, but we don't have I mean, the main being that might cause us harm is another human being. We don't have other predators in a big way for most of us. I'm obviously generalizing a bit here. You know, and then I have to remind myself that, you know, where you live, Tiffany, there are bears and lions and stuff in a way that we can pretend don't happen over here in our little island. But it's, I wonder if that also, you know, perhaps there's something about our nervous system that makes us tend to look for and notice the negative stuff in a way, because that's the stuff that might be a problem. And, you know, even if we're in a situation where we're not actually in danger or under threat, we might pay more attention to the negative things that might make us uncomfortable, because that part of our bodies, our nervous system's quite basic. Like, it isn't very good at discerning between there's a lion there about to eat me and I'm feeling really stressed because I have a work deadline and my boss is going to be really angry with me if I don't get it done. So it's, yeah, I just wonder if there's some kind of predisposition, if you like, to notice the more negative or difficult than the positive and joyful and fun.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think it's one of many examples of how our evolution hasn't caught up with our culture, and it causes us some trouble. Causes us some trouble. Yeah. But like, you know, the whole wonderful thing about understanding that is the same thing as understanding what we're saying about not being porous, that these things are really happening, is once you begin to have insight, once you begin to increase your energy intelligence and you understand that, you can see the experience from a little bit at arm's length, right? You can see and understand that what's happening to you is happening to you not because you're a terrible person or because you really do need to be super worried and anxious about something, or, you know, you can whoa, and kind of take a few steps back and understand, you know, I liked what you said about walking through the field and being muddy. You can walk through the field and be muddy without having to turn that mud into a meaningful declaration of your own value. Or something that you have to address other than just get to the other side of the field so that you can clean it off, right? You just wear it for as long as you need to wear it, and you don't have to turn it into something else, which is also something that it's a very human thing to do.
That's a really good way of putting it. I mean, in my case, I have a dog and I, live in England. So if I was to completely avoid mud, I would never leave the house and I probably shouldn't have got a dog. Um, but I have a tap outside my house and, when we come back, we hose off his feet and his belly and clean our boots and, and that deals with the mud. Um, and, sometimes it's more hard work or feels more annoying, but it's not it never feels someone's out to get me. Like, it's just that's just the nature of the environment, which feels like it does a perfect segue into one of the things we really wanted to talk about today was a bit more about the environment, the impact the environment has on us that is certainly not completely disentangleable, and that's not a word, I'm just making that up, from the people, but certainly is helpful to know that there is, there is stuff in our physical environment that also has an impact. And some of those are very, things that probably won't surprise you, like lighting, temperature, the, Wi-Fi, telephone, whatever waves, they are all in the ether around us and probably having some kind of impact. But the energy of a place is made up of a bunch of stuff. Now, depending on the place, obviously this will vary, but we have the land itself and the history of that land and what's happened there. And I mean, people will talk about things like ancient burial sites or particular places that, depending on ley lines or all kinds of different things, that will mean that the energy of a place, of the land itself, is varies according to the place. And then we have things that have been done or changed because of human intervention. And I'm suddenly thinking about, places like Stonehenge, which I live fairly near, which most people will have heard of. And, that humans at some point, we don't really understand why, came and put big stones in a circle on that site. And there's a sense that that did something at some point to kind of, that's had an impact. And now, whatever you believe about why that was done or the purpose of that, for years and years and years and years, hundreds and millions probably of people have been traipsing around that site, seeing it as a special place to go. For some people, it may just be an interesting monument. For other people, it's a very deeply spiritual place. So all of those layers of things start to have an impact. One thing we do know about Stonehenge is the stones came from a different place in the country. They were moved from Wales, I think. So, there are things on that piece of land that weren't originally there. And then when we start to think about more, human made, human constructed buildings, the materials that are used, the sort of physical. So we've got the land, we've got the physical structures on the land, and then we add in the all the energy of the people and the way they view it and what's happened there. Has there been a war there? But also our ideas about things. And a story that kind of comes to mind for me is somebody who was really wanted to sell their bed, because it was quite a new bed, but they had not long after getting the bed, this person had separated from their partner. So for them, was all these memories and, and a kind of an energy that had built up around this bed. And the person that this person gave the bed to didn't have a problem with it, because it was just like, amazing, I've got a new bed that's like nearly new, I don't have to buy a bed, whatever. Because there was, for them, it had kind of no significance or no meaning. So they were able to just kind of cleanse the energy of the bed and feel great.
You make me think about the differences you can sometimes feel, if not always feel, between an upmarket luxury, quote unquote, progressive supermarket versus a cheaper, more mundane, straightforward supermarket. And I think on the surface, people often assume that the more upmarket luxury supermarket is going to have better energy, right? The products are organic, the materials are sustainable that they've built with, they're bringing in things from, developing countries, and they're running a nonprofit on the side. But actually, there's so many expectations and so many ideas that people have to live up to, and so many reactions that people are having when they go to that supermarket. Can I afford to be here? Do I have the right to be here? Am I a fraud? Am I going to meet a date? Am I cool enough? All of those things are going on, and all of those energetic residuals are in the supermarket versus the more mundane, straightforward supermarket where people are really just looking for toilet bowl cleaner. And between the two, I'd certainly rather go on a hiking trail than either of those things. But the straightforward, I really just need, toilet bowl cleaner is a much more straightforward energy that's really easier to deal with than the other more complicated energetics are.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's probably always going to be, in most cases, impossible to completely tease out what's the place. And I mean, if you think about a supermarket, I mean, usually the lighting is horrible, and you're bombarded with a lot of stimulus from the often they're often playing crappy music, and there's a kind of a noise to it, and millions of colors, and overwhelming, often these days, product. And it also, people are going to be going into supermarkets. We often do our shopping at the end of our day, or when we're rushing, or maybe people are worrying about money, and all that energy gets kind of trailed around and left behind. But there's all that, just that combination of things. So that all sounds a bit depressing and kind of miserable, and makes you probably never want to go into a supermarket again. But I think probably now we can move on to something a little bit more positive, which are, what can we do about it? Tiffany mentioned right at the beginning that about us being semi-porous, and being, how well, like our skin, how well that barrier to the energies around us is functioning, will depend on, lots of different things. So one part of that is our good self-care. So I think, and some other practical things which we'll talk about first of all, and those things are, I suppose, a combination of, so again, how can we increase our energy intelligence, our energetic knowledge and awareness, and our ability to incorporate that into our lives to help us take actions, but also see things in a way which helps us be more balanced about it. So if we start with good self-care, just like with our skin, if we're doing a good job of looking after our skin through how we care for it externally, but also through what we eat and keeping ourselves hydrated and sleeping well and all those things, our skin will work better and will be a better barrier to external things that might cause us problems. And the same is true for our energy. So there are things we can do to help to look after that better. I think it's also really important to say, there might be some places or some people that we might just say, do you know what, I don't want to do that today. I don't want to be around that person today. Or ever, possibly, if you have that choice. But certainly, thinking about if there are situations or people that for you are likely to have a big impact or have that great degree of resonance that we were talking about, give yourself permission to say, not today, or I'll just go for a very short period and then I'll leave early and I'll plan something so that I can get away. To help you have those good boundaries, to look after yourself a bit better. For some people, things like talismans, crystals, stone in your pocket, may be helpful. They can, help to anchor us a little bit. But you might find that they're not actually as helpful as you'd like them to be, because I think, depends on the thing, but how much impact they can actually have on the energy around you, may be more limited than we might hope. Other things that just I think are worth mentioning that can help in terms of us, that porousness and looking after our energy boundary, if you like, the part of our energy system that gives us that protection to what's going on around us. And, it doesn't necessarily make us less sensitive when we're looking after it well, but gives us a bit more of a distance and a boundary. One of those is a method of energy healing called Reiki, which you may or may not have heard of. And we are definitely going to do more podcasts on this, because both Tiffany and I use Reiki in the energy healing work we do, but also teach Reiki. And Reiki is something you can learn to do on yourself. You do have to go to an in-person class to learn that, but it's a really fabulous method of energy healing that can be used for self-care, that really looks after that part of your energy system that can help with this whole topic that we've been talking about. And if you don't have access to, you can also receive Reiki from someone else, but ultimately I think we will both agree on this, that learning it to be able to do on yourself is the most effective. So, it's a bit like keeping yourself hydrated. If you have to go to somebody and say, can I have some water now, every time, you're probably going to drink less. Or if you have to walk to the well to collect your water, you're going to be less well hydrated than if you can just turn on a tap and get your own water and drink as much as you like. So definitely would recommend that as a way to look after your energy better and help you manage the impact of your environment and people. And then the other two things I think that I would want to mention here. One is sage. So sage is just the herb, like the kind you would use in cooking. Comes from the indigenous American population of where herbs, particularly sage is one, were dried and burned, and the smoke is used for cleansing. It's a very good cleansing method of both spaces. So you can, waft it around your room, leave the doors open or windows open to allow it to circulate, and it's good for cleansing energies out, cleaning things. But you can also kind of waft it around your own body to help to clear your own energy. And the last thing is that there are various techniques that probably look a little bit generally like a meditation type technique, visualization, where you can actually directly focus on cleaning your own energy. We have some other recordings and things that you can look up to help you with that.
Yes, and really all of those will absolutely go towards helping the situation get better. And having said that, just please keep in mind what we've been saying, that because humans as a species are energetically porous, this is not something that anybody can stop completely. It is the price of having a body and having an energy and having a mind and walking around and being who you are. And knowing and having information that increases your intelligence and your understanding of how energy works in the world will go a long way. So I think the biggest one that we've talked about that really strikes me is knowing when it's us and not us. I think at first, when we're infected by other places or people's energy that's not feeling good, we always understandably assume it's us because it's inside us. We're feeling it inside our body, right? It's a little bit, I guess, I don't know, the best analogy I can come up with is drinking alcohol, right? Alcohol is not us, but when we put it in our bloodstream, all of our experiences of drinking that alcohol are happening to us, right? But we know it's the alcohol, right? We know it's the alcohol. And so if there's some way with experience and practice to begin to feel when that toxic, negative, gunky stuff has gotten inside of us, that feeling, Karen, you were chatting about this earlier, used the word grubby, and I thought that's so exactly perfect. That feeling that makes us feel grubby, it's not us, right? And again, like it's gonna take time to clean out, and we're gonna be able to take care of it. But just knowing that goes a long way towards certainly means that you're not increasing the experience. It's very easy to increase, when you start judging ourselves for why am I feeling like this? I can't believe I'm anxious again. I can't believe, yada, 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 all the things that we get mad at ourselves for. We are absolutely not just increasing the intensity, but we're prolonging the negative experience versus just allowing it to be what it is. And also equally knowing that if you're walking into a store or a shopping mall, there's going to be a lot of energy there that's trying to get you to buy things. And as soon as you know that, I think there's an intelligence that comes with understanding advertising and how advertising and the placements of things in retail stores are all designed to get us to spend more money. Well, if you can understand that there's an energetic parallel to that that's pushing us in that direction, it also gives us certainly to stop it increasing, but allows the duration to be shorter as well. And that can be very, very, very helpful. I loved you mentioning that there are ways to clean the energy that we sit in that's getting dirty. But I really don't, and I love that you mentioned sage, because I really don't want to ever sage is guess what I'm trying to say is sage is such a wonderfully simple solution. And it doesn't have to be sage. It can be any smoke, really. I think people have heard us say this in other places. People talk about sage, but really it's the smoke that's doing the cleaning. So any smoke within reason, cigarette smoke probably isn't going to work the way you'd like it to. But really smoke is what's going to do the job. And it will do it well, and it will do it thoroughly, and you will feel incredibly improved as a result of that. But really, what the most important thing to realize in all of this is that there's things you can do to make it easier. There's things that you can do to make it less long to suffer through. But it is part of being human, and you're not crazy that you think it's happening. And to the best of our ability, it will pass. And do what you can to make it easier, and try not to make it worse by beating yourself up about it.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit like, I mean, I think the weather is a good example. We know weather has an impact on us, and having some expectation about what the weather's going to be like can help us to prepare. But we don't generally, like I was saying about, getting mud and walking my dog, and it's not personal, and it's not your fault if you're affected by it. But I think we did want to, just before we end, say something about people who might be considered to be super sensitive, or consider themselves to be super sensitive. And when we're thinking about these kind of energetic boundaries that sort of protect us from external energies that might be coming from people or places or what have you, as we've been talking about, these boundaries don't have to be rigid. So like our skin is designed to let some things in. It is semi-porous. It's not a complete solid boundary, but equally it's not completely open. So we want it to be selectively porous. And like our skin, our energy system, when healthy, is generally quite good at knowing what's good to let in and what's not good to let in. And but so if you have a sense that you might be super sensitive in some way, one reason for mentioning it is because some of the things we've mentioned might be less helpful to you, if the reason that you're super sensitive is because your aura, your energy field, that boundary you have, is kind of challenged in some way or needs a bit of help, and you might need to see a healer to help you with that. I mean, I think there's also, there are individual differences. Some people just are more sensitive, so might need to just take a little bit more care of themselves, or limit a bit more their exposure to certain kinds of situations. And some people, conversely to that, some people might want to be more sensitive. And again, a healer might be able to help you with that. But also just, again, doing some of the things we've suggested could help you to become a little bit more aware and more sensitive to energies around you in a really positive way.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking it's so easy to focus on the negative. And before we end, just take a moment and say explicitly there are going to be times when you'd like to become more sensitive because you're enjoying what you're experiencing. And the only one that comes to mind that we haven't mentioned already is to relax. And I don't mean that as a kind of throwaway
Mm.
comment. What I mean is that when the body relaxes, the energy opens, right? So the energy follows the body. If you can take a moment and just take a deep breath, and as you exhale, kind of sink into your body and allow yourself to feel bottom heavy, a bit like you're a water balloon going shoo, kind of coming down. Your body will relax and your energy will naturally follow that lead, and it will become more porous and more open. And in that moment, you will be able to take in more of what it is that you're experiencing and enjoying.
Yeah, and there I guess we might seek out some of those, like if you know, look out for the places and the people that make you feel good. And then, you know, go do more of those, especially if you're feeling a bit out of balance, and getting to know that sense of, you know, what replenishes you, what helps you to feel less bombarded, what feels like a place where you can relax, where you can pause, where you can feel, you know, where you feel the most comfortable. And you know, maybe doing a bit more of seeking out those places with the kind of energy that suits you. I mean, some people love to be in the frenetic energy of a nightclub or a city. Other people really can't deal with that. So and it's not a right or wrong. It's just a, um, what most do you know, what most suits you. And that might change at different times in your life. I mean, there were certainly times when I would have enjoyed spending time in a nightclub much more than I would now. But you know, it's about getting to know yourself. What, you know, noticing where are the places, who are the people that make me feel um, good and kind of uplifted and positive, so I can, you know, really nourish that positive energy in me, and um, not be so impacted by the stuff that feels harder, the places and the people that feel harder to be around.
Yeah. So hopefully we've given you a good sense of the landscape that you are being affected by the people around you and by the environments around you. And there's an inevitability to that, that you cannot completely turn that off because of the species that you currently are occupying the body of. So change the things that you can in the direction that you'd like it changed in. Do your best to look after yourself and either minimize the impact or increase it if it's a positive one for you. And when you're not able to do that, hopefully we've given you some tools that will help you repair and recharge and get back into the balance that you'd like as quickly as possible. Remembering that the more you can understand how the energy works for yourself and the world around you, the more you increase your energy intelligence, the more you're going to be able to cope better with things and be able to adapt more easily and take care of yourself. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks very much. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Carol Smith, the producer of the Life Made Easier podcast. We hope today's episode gave you some meaningful tools and takeaways to help make your life feel a little lighter. You've reached the end of this episode, but not the end of the ways that you can support us. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, follow us on social media, and check out our Patreon for extra content and ways you can go deeper with us. There's also a whole library of episodes waiting for you to help increase your energy intelligence. Take care, and we'll see you on the next Life Made Easier.